Business Association. Welcome to this, our third Battle for Auckland Mayoral series, in which we're inviting various candidates to come along and give us their pitch for the reasons why they should be Mayor or Mayoress of Auckland. I will now pass over to my colleague Cheryl from Parnell to do some intros.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Mark. I'd like to formally welcome you all this morning on behalf of Newmarket, Parnell, Ponsonby, K Road and Uptown Business Associations. Also like to welcome members of the media, who Mark will introduce individually later after Viv has spoken. In terms of the format, Mark Knopf-Thomas, the CEO of Newmarket Business Association, will be moderating the session. So please can we ask you to make sure your microphones are on mute and save questions for the end. The upcoming election for the mayoralty has obviously a huge impact on businesses in the city. Our relationship with council is critical to empowering our businesses and securing the economic prosperity for our future businesses. There are probably few people who are more in touch with our specific challenges in Auckland than Viv Beck, and it now gives me great pleasure to formally introduce her. After completing a Bachelor of Arts in Economics at Victoria University, Viv has had a diverse career spanning the public, private, and not-for-profit sectors. She's held governance and senior roles in large companies, led a medium-sized design and print agency, and also been involved with startups. Before relocating from Wellington, Viv was the Director of Communications and a member of the senior leadership team for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. She was chair of the Wellington Museums Trust and a director of the former economic development agency, Grow Wellington. As chief executive of Heart of the City and chair of the City Centre Advisory Board for several years, she's worked constructively with the Auckland Council Group, but she's also challenged their poor performance in certain instances. Viv has played a key role in standing up for businesses impacted by the City Rail Link construction and sought financial support for future large-scale, long-term infrastructure projects. She's also played a positive role in developing and supporting solutions to the growing social issues in our city. Over the last 2 years, Auckland City Centre has certainly been hit by a perfect storm with the impact of COVID-19, increased crime and antisocial behaviour, as we all know. Viv has worked together with businesses and sector groups, government and social agencies to support Auckland businesses and their recovery. Having personally worked with Viv on several joint bid initiatives, I can certainly agree that she has a collaborative style of leadership with a strong focus on results. Viv, we look forward to hearing from you.
Morning, everyone. When I was waiting for IT support this morning, I thought of two things. One, how fabulous it is to be able to work in person with people. And secondly, it reminded me years ago of a conference I went to in Los Angeles. And it was a fabulous conference, and I remember being excited to hear from this interactive agency, and they stood up and their technology failed. So that put things in perspective for me, but I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late to the meeting this morning. Look, we live in a beautiful place, and there are many things that people love: the beaches, the parks, the galleries, our hospitality. There is something here for everyone. And it's not hard to imagine how fabulous it could be. And there are many wonderful plans and great designs sitting in drawers around the city. My goal is to unleash our ability to make things happen so that we don't just talk about them year after year. I agree with Sir Peter Gluckman that ideally a vision would be created with the people of Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, and I would love to lead that discussion as mayor. But right now, there are other things on people's mind that need to be sorted before we can truly unleash our potential. Transport and congestion, lack of accountability and waste from Auckland Council and the CCOs, crime, housing, climate change, and recovery from the largest economic, social, and health shock that we will see in our lifetime. And these are the things that I'm hearing from people across the region. My immediate priority is to sort these things, and I'm going to talk now about the leadership I believe we need to do that. Leadership starts at the top of any well-functioning, high-performance organisation, and Auckland Council is no exception. Firstly, a mayor is not the chief executive of council. A mayor needs to lead the way and raise the bar. not go in thinking that they are there to do everything and do it their way. The mayor needs to draw the very best performance from others, not just from themselves. I think a mayor needs to care deeply about all the people of the region and treat ratepayers as customers, creating a culture where council genuinely listens to their views before big decisions are made. And I'm looking at ways at how we could do this in a way that leads to great decisions, but takes away the enormous, frustrating sham consultations that frustrate so many people right now. I think a mayor needs to care a lot about the councillors. They are the board and they need to work together. Healthy debate is good, but they need to work together to make the decisions that need to be made. They have a very important job to do to set very clear expectations for the chief executive and the CCOs. Expectations that get rid of the murkiness and silos that detract from performance today. We all see it, lots of people coming to meetings and you still wonder where the outcome is quite often. I think a mayor needs to be able to work very effectively with central government whilst getting what Auckland needs. People are actually fed up with decisions that are being made in Wellington for Auckland that are not resonating with them. And we need to find a sustainable way to plan and fund large infrastructure that our region needs. So in terms of how all of this would translate into actions, if I'm elected mayor, there will be a culture of setting targets, on time, on budget delivery, and accountability. In summary, there is a ton of potential in Tāmaki Makaurau. We need to sort the things that are holding us back, and we need to be ambitious to get the place we really want. The leadership I would be collaborative, constructive, and it would get things done.
Awesome. Thank you, Viv. We'll now introduce the media panel. So joining us this week, we have Simon Wilson from the New Zealand Herald, Todd Niall from Stuff, and Brent Melville from Business Desk, and Mark Jennings from Newsroom. And as in previous weeks, the media will have 3 to 4 to 5 minutes, depending on how we go with the topic, because sometimes the media cover off some of the questions that have been submitted from members from across the central fringe area from the Business Association. So true to form, we'll start off over to you again, Simon, to start off this week, please. And your time starts in about 2 seconds, and I'll give you a buzz at about 3.5 minutes. If Simon is there.
Thank you, Mark. Good
Awesome.
Morning, Viv.
Morning.
Simon, you still there? We may.
Phone.
Okay.
It's tricky here.
Oh, we lost
Can you hear
Simon.
me?
Yeah, we got you. Yep.
Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? It's frozen.
Yes, I can. Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one, Simon.
I'm really sorry. I'm having nightmares this morning about this. And I don't have tech support, Viv. So, Viv, hi. My first question, you've been chair of CEO of Heart of the City for, what, 7 years now, and also chair of the City Centre Advisory Group. How responsible do you feel for the current state of the central city?
Well, it's part of the reason I'm standing, actually, but I'll tell you that prior to construction of the CRL, we've been tracking the city since the first sod was turned. So we know that performance was strong in the city centre. It started to dip as construction took over in some parts. Actually, interestingly, not in Queen Street, despite some of the commentary. The sales were still over $500 million a year in Queen Street. But the reality is that construction has played a major role, and so has COVID-19, as it has in cities around the country. We have done absolutely everything we can do. And in fact, in April 2020, I went to the governing body and I said to them that we had lost 90% of our customers. This was going to be absolutely huge for the city centre. I basically outlined what I anticipated would happen. And I said that we need a very collaborative approach between central government, local government, private sector, and actually the not-for-profit sector as well, because of look at all the social issues that have arisen Unfortunately, that has not transpired. However, we have continued to endeavour to get the best result we can, and I'm happy to talk about some of those things. But the reality is we've been hit severely. We've been in the eye of a storm.
You've talked about the importance of being able to galvanise people, to get consensus, to get things done. Isn't your role in the central city, isn't that a measure of your ability to do those things? I'm just wondering why you feel that you are able to do more, you would be able to do more as mayor when you've been in the hot seat for so many years.
I think I could spend the entire time talking about this, Simon, and I know I've only got 3 minutes, but the reality is when I chaired the advisory board, we had a very united vision for the city centre. That was pre-COVID. And that was all range of people. We were very united. We did challenge council on some of the things that we thought they were not doing well enough, but we were united. We were very aspirational in our expectations for some of the projects. We have seen a real change through COVID, and I think that's been regrettable because ultimately to get things done, you do need willing parties, and there has been a lot of challenge in terms of getting ratepayers and members of our constituency heard through this time. We're not alone. We have been working with sector groups, business groups across the region. And if you talk to Brett O'Reilly, for example, he would be able to tell you about the work that we have done to really ensure there's been a collaborative approach with central government. The reality is you need willing parties in a collaboration. And I've been deeply disappointed with the response at times from Auckland Council. It's got better. We've worked on isolated projects constructively, but in terms of the response to COVID, I'm not satisfied at all. And that is one of the reasons I'm standing for mayor.
Brilliant. Thank you for that.
My view of Queen Street is that
you got 30 seconds.
All right, Viv, 30 seconds, your elevator pitch. What should happen in Queen Street?
Well, I think we need to have a quality place outcome. That Queen Street project has not been well managed. All members, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a member of that advisory board that feels that that's been a well managed project. And I think a row of pot plants from Custom Street to Mayoral Drive is not what I would call a world-class outcome for what is really our most famous street. So there's a place solution. Sorry, I can't hear you, Simon.
I'm asking what you do want, not what you don't want.
No, what I'm saying is I think that ideally there would have been a world-class place solution for Queen Street, and that is something we advocated for. I think that we've got it's a little different from somewhere like a Commercial Bay and a Britomart where you can curate the offering. We've certainly brought property owners together to think about the offering. We've had a very good response from them with our recent City of Colour. So there is definitely work that can be done around the offering, but you'll start to see, we're seeing some new growth coming now. We've got new openings coming. The reality is it's partly place, it's partly the safety and some of the social issues that we've seen that need addressing. So that's absolutely vital. And it's about having a place that people want to come to. The reality is Queen Street is still a third of our spend, but it is going through a transformation, and that transformation needs to be good.
Okay, on to you, Todd. Todd, if you can, you're muted at the moment. Thanks, Simon.
Morning, Viv. I just want to go for a big picture one and then a follow-up question to that. And the big picture one is really to what extent you as mayor would be committed to meeting Auckland's carbon emission goals, for example, the 64% lowering of transport emissions. And I guess bearing in mind that we don't yet know what that needs, and it might need a faster and bigger change from the status quo than we're talking about now.
Oh, absolutely. I think if you look at the climate plan from council, that's not performing to plan at all. So I think it's very important. As I understand it, it's one of the highest responses to any consultation. I think, if I'm correct, it's something like in the 60s, and I know that boardrooms around the country have got climate change in their sights. I think it's very important, and the way things are going, we're not on track to deliver it.
So what would you want to see happen to speed that up?
Well, I think initiatives like electrification of the fleet. I think I'm a big supporter of rapid transit. I do think we need to get real mode shift. We have to have a public transport system that gets people where they want to go when they want to get there. So I think public transport is important. I think at the moment, I'm not releasing my transport policy until a bit further in the campaign, but we're certainly doing work that is going to be very practical, affordable and deliverable, because I think some of these gold-plated initiatives that take years, you talk about them forever and they don't get delivered, is not helping us meet our targets.
So if the government later today was to extend or make permanent half-price public transport fares, does that seem a good spend of public money in your view?
Well, I think pricing initiatives are important. I'm certainly supportive of them for lower income people. Obviously, older people get it through their gold card. Students, young people who are, we're obviously trying to ensure have their mode and behaviour right from a young age. One of the concerns I have is that we need to invest in the public transport. And what I've seen internationally is that offering everybody, for example, free public transport is not the best way to get the mode shift. Yes, it will increase, but it's people who are likely to be catching it anyway. And the only thing I'd say is the pricing initiatives are positive. It does get more people on, but we just have to have the best way of getting a public transport network as quickly as possible that more people are going to use, so we genuinely get mode shift. I mean, it is helpful at the moment.
So that's a no.
No, I'm
saying
that pricing is useful. I just think we also have to make sure we've got enough money to build the transport network that we need.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd. Moving on to you, Brent.
Hello. Hi, Viv.
Hi.
Todd took a couple of my questions. Way to go. All eyes on Wellington today, budget. I thought maybe opportune to ask what your views on council's finances, state of finances and debt. What are your views on that, and how do you look at, are you going to rein that in potentially? I mean, the council managed to push up their staffing through COVID, for example. Just thought maybe you had a perspective on that one.
I have a very strong view on this, and I think this is one of the things that really irks people, is the lack of accountability and delivery across the council group. People aren't so. The feedback I get is that people understand rates, but they want to make sure they're getting value for money. So I think at the moment, the levers to drive performance from both the council and the CCOs are not being used effectively. I'm actually expecting to get my confidence by the election. What I would want to see is each of those entities being able to show how they would meet these big fiscal gaps, and also how they have delivered on the CCO review that was done in 2020, because from what I can see, there is not much accountability there to achieving those goals. And basically the findings of that report was that the model is right, apart from merging RFA and ATEED, but I have yet to see high quality outcomes from that. So that's my starting point. I think if we're not going to get that confidence, then we're going to need to see a different level of change. But I think they should have a chance. That report was done, and I want to see the outcome.
Your opponents have a view on Auckland Unlimited, for example. Now, you've obviously worked quite closely with them. What's your view on that as a CCO kind of model?
Well, I do think there is a place for planning large-scale events, because we know, for example, that does attract people. And I think it is important that we're focused on attracting quality investment, skills, high growth businesses, that sort of thing. I think at the moment, to be fair, the jury is still out. As I say, I really want to see results from that review that was done, and I don't think we've seen them yet.
Yeah, the elephant in the room, possibly the port. Again, opponents have got a view.
Oh, look, I think we should be extracting maximum value from that. But I've always been clear that is prime waterfront land, and I'd like to see an aspirational plan actually delivered. There's lots of plans. It's another one where there's lots of exciting things we get excited about every now and again. But the reality is, right now I'm conscious that many Aucklanders have got other priorities. But having said that, there is a much higher value model for that land, and that's really clear to me. What I would do is put a time limit on making that change. There's quite a strong view that the port needs to find an alternative, and I think we should be working now on what is that aspiration for that area. It's a major opportunity for our region and for our country. But I do think we have to retain the ownership of the land. So it's actually about separating the land and keeping that in public ownership.
Versus the business itself. Do you think there's a view to maybe float it like a Port of Tauranga?
Oh, look, I mean, there's been lots of reports done on this. I think there needs to be a decision around what that model is. And ultimately what matters to me, if I was mayor, is that the cost of products and services to Auckland don't skyrocket, but I think we have to be quite lateral in thinking about what the options are with Tauranga North Port, and make sure we get the best outcome for the port, but maximising the value of that land is a real opportunity for our region.
Last question. You've committed to being mayor for how many terms do you reckon you'll be there?
Oh, right now I'm focused on the first one and what needs to happen in that time frame. But obviously, I do see a sequence of activity. I really, really want to get the big issues addressed, and I want to realise major opportunity for our region. So that would be more than one term.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. And on to you, Mark. You're on mute.
Apologies for that. Good morning, Viv. One of the things that interests me is that we seem to have three candidates on the right and one on the left, so to speak. I know that's a bit simplistic, but are you in danger here of the right splitting the vote completely and Afiso Collins walking through the middle of it all? Shouldn't you be trying to somehow get rid of one of these candidates on the right?
Well, I'm not entirely sure what persuasion some of the other candidates are, because it does seem to vary from time to time. But the reality is, I think at this point of the campaign, it's about choice. And I think it's very important that voters really are engaging in this, understanding how important this election is for Tāmaki Makaurau Auckland, and understanding the difference between the candidates. And I'm trying to bring a point of difference to the style of leadership that I would bring, that I have utilised in other capacities, and I would like the opportunity for people to understand that. So I think there's a long way to go before election day.
How would you compare your style to the others?
Well, I guess one of my key points of difference, I don't want to comment on other people's strengths and weaknesses, but the reality is one of my key points of difference is that I'm very results focused, but I like to work collaboratively with people and constructively. That doesn't mean that I don't make hard decisions. I have led a business, and I walked in the door and we lost basically 2 large accounts. And within that first year, I had to turn over about 80% of the senior leadership team. I can make decisions, hard decisions, but I like to take people with me as best I can. In that particular case, I did. We built a very strong culture from that, and I'll never forget the delight of winning that business again. The reality is it does depend on the job, and in this case, you're a public servant, you're there to do the very best job for our city. And you've got to be able to really understand the people you're there for, stand up for them through thick and thin. You've got to be able to work with the councillors, otherwise nothing will get done. You've got to understand the dynamic of the councillors and of the officials. Similarly with Wellington. Wellington is a very different beast. I've spent much of my career working there. I have worked with ministers and ministers' offices. I've worked in with the local government sector as well. I understand the dynamic, and I think to get the best out of all of the people that play a role in that ecosystem needs a particular style of leadership.
Do you think being a woman is an advantage here? It's certainly a point of difference, but is it Do you see it as an advantage for you?
I've always believed it's the best person for the role. So I'm not seeing it as a gender-based thing. I know some people are interested in the fact that I'm a woman, and that's terrific. And I'm actually very heartened and honoured by the support that is being shown to me. But for me, it's about the best person for the job. And it's about the skills for the job. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, just switching topics a wee bit here for a minute, going back to the CBD. There seems to be a lot of emphasis around reviving the CBD, cleaning up crime and stuff like that. But are we not perhaps missing the point that the CBD is never going to be what it was again? Time has just simply moved on. And, you know, we need to take the focus away. I don't hear anybody talking about Grey Lynn or Parnell or whatever. It's all about the CBD. But the CBD's changed, it's finished.
Well, it's interesting because you look at internationally, and I mean, Google, for example, has just bought in downtown London, recognising the value of agglomeration, having people together. I think there's a couple of things to think about. Firstly, we don't call it the CBD, we call it the city centre, because that recognises that for many years now, we have been building a place for people to live, work, study, and visit. And that's quite a significant a point that needs to be understood, because, you know, 30 years ago, there were sort of less than, as I understand it, less than 1,500 people living here. We've now got about 40,000. So we've got, and I'm one of them, living here. So it's basically your back door. But the reality is there are still, we've got to remember there's been billions of dollars of public and private sector investment that has been spent here and is still scheduled to be spent here. Remembering there's still a plan for light rail, which will come in here. And the city rail link isn't finished yet. And it perplexes me that, for example, there's a significant source of business for our businesses to come through workers. We're getting a wonderful response from the large corporates, but the worst performers at bringing their people back is actually Auckland Council and its organisations, which is extraordinary because, you know, so much money is being spent on the place. So the reality is, yes, it is changing. Flexible working started before COVID, so we understand that it will be more hybrid, and that's great for people's lifestyles. But the reality is, there is still a lot of benefit. I mean, I'm talking to businesses about how pleased they are to have people. In fact, I'm going to an event tonight with a whole bunch of organisations that are delighted to have their people back, and there's an event to celebrate being back together in person. But the reality is it will change. We've got to think differently about what we're attracting here. I think there's a huge opportunity for more people to live here. I mean, I am an exponent of the 15-minute city. I'm lucky. I can walk everywhere. I don't need to drive very much. In fact, I rarely drive. I don't like driving. But the reality is, even when the city rail link is in, you know, only about 45% of Aucklanders will be able to get here by public transport. And that's why we've got to fast track the delivery of public transport. Commuting is not so much an issue. We've been big supporters of the fact that more people, it's been static in terms of people coming by private vehicle for commuting, and that's fantastic. But the reality is the shift workers, the people on lower income that are coming into work, they have to be able to access the place. I think it's a bit disconcerting when you hear such doom. Yes, we've got to change, but let's be excited about that. Let's work together. Let's be aspirational about how we're going to ensure we've got this wonderful cultural, civic, commercial hub that we can all be proud of.
Thanks, Viv.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Viv, we've got some questions which we've been asking the contenders over the last few weeks, and largely the themes have remained the same. I'll start off with the hot topic, which is a hot topic in the media right now, but it's been a hot topic for the various business associations for a number of years. It's crime. So crime in our town centres is top of mind for many small business owners, and we've seen currently a spike in ram raids and all kinds of smash and grabs. What more do you think the council could do to help in this area?
Well, we've been working pretty hard with council, I think, and as some of you will know, we've worked together on this. We have raised the issue with council, and I think there's two things. One is that we do have to get our fair share from central government. Now, they've announced additional police a week ago. We are trying to understand actually what that means, both in terms of our share for Auckland, our share versus the rest of the country, and our share internationally. But I think that's a recognition that some of this is about crime. But we've also been saying, look, this is not only just about crime, it is about mental health, addiction, and a whole range of issues that are really significant for our country, not just for our region. And I think that the role that Auckland can play and our local government can play is to ensure, one, it's standing up for our needs with central government, and it's been extremely difficult to do that. We've finally had some success in terms of getting additional resource, policing resource or commitment, but also a recognition that it is not just a policing matter. And we've been advocating, as you know, for cross-agency solutions that look at health, housing, workplace safety, and some of the social issues. And we've got an acknowledgement now that that is vital. But what I would be doing as Mayor is absolutely pushing the urgency, because it has been excruciatingly slow, and we endeavoured to not get to the severity that we've got to, and we did absolutely everything we could. I think the Mayor does have an advantage over a business group trying to lobby for this thing, because at the end of the day, they can make sure that government actually engages. And I think that's vital. We have ended up being heard, and certainly some of the work we've done with COVID, we've been heard, and we've had some decent hearings with central government. But I think it's vital that we get activity, for example, initiatives, for example, that support some of the smaller businesses that are facing these dreadful repeated break-ins. So I think it's about what we can do locally to ensure all of the different resources, whether it's the housing, emergency housing is another one. You know, Auckland Council and successive governments and businesses, groups like ours, have supported, for example, the Housing First initiative. The issue with emergency housing is that those principles were not applied. So I think the role of council is to stand up and work with central government and all of the agencies involved in these solutions and set really clear targets. Some of this work has just been aimless and too slow, and we've got to really bring accountability to it. It's too important not to get this right, because with the borders opening, I mean, there was an article in The Guardian, for goodness sake, about safety here, I mean, in our region. And that's just not good enough.
Okay, if you were Mayor of Auckland, what infrastructural projects would you champion and take to Wellington as a priority for Auckland's ongoing development?
Well, once my policy is announced, that would be, and I'll be campaigning on that, that will be something I'd take to central government. I do think that we have to get a different model for planning and funding major infrastructure, so that will be one of my priorities. But transport is the number one issue I'm hearing at the moment, so it will be a transport one. And I'll be announcing that in due course. But I think transport absolutely must be addressed.
Okay. Despite COVID and lockdowns and the changes we've gone through, and we're moving back to some businesses into a hybrid model, as we've mentioned previously in this call this morning, Auckland undoubtedly is going to continue to grow. And once we've got through the speed bumps we're going through, people will start flocking back and immigration will ramp up again. And so Auckland is undoubtedly going to expand. How could the council better support the future growth of Auckland?
Well, I think it has to be very focused. One of the things that worries me a lot about the council, when you start reading some of the plans, is there's a proliferation of them, and there's action plans and things. What worries me a lot is that how well those things are delivered on, and the CCO review is a prime case. What I'm looking for is clear actions to support growth. So, for example, one thing that I'm keen on, as well as creating an environment that supports business, but I think one of the areas that has been hit through COVID is the nighttime. So that across the region was worth about $1 billion before COVID, and it's had the stuffing knocked out of it. And I'm certainly interested, and I'm quite attracted to the model, for example, that exists in some cities where you have like a night mayor, and you have somebody who is totally responsible for all the things that make the nighttime special and different, whether it's the transport options, the lighting, the security, and the enabling factors for business, I think that would be one that could really kickstart the economy again following COVID. But we've also got to make sure that the infrastructure and transport are the things that really are holding us back. And I think, for example, with housing, there is actually enough land. The unitary plan had enough land earmarked for the next 30 years, but the speed of consenting and actually getting infrastructure built is really holding us back.
Great. I quite like that. Turn the nightmare into a nightmare. It's very good. And finally from me, so we've mentioned briefly around transport, and public transport is obviously going to be a very huge part of Auckland's future growth and development. You'll be aware obviously that Auckland Transport has recently gone through a consultation on their parking strategy, and just what your sort of thoughts were around that and where they're going with their parking strategy.
Well, I think land is scarce and we do have to be looking at how we utilise it. But the reality is, I thought that putting out a consultation that, one, says it's a predetermined outcome is wrong, fundamentally. Two, I haven't seen enough evidence that they've actually looked at trends that may last beyond COVID, technology changes, putting out a policy like that without really having given thought to what we need to do to unlock the transport across the city, and just sort of almost taking an old model, I don't think is good enough. I think we need practical, sensible planning to unlock our transport. We can't just do things to people. People have to understand, and they might not like every decision, but they have to understand it. And to think that nearly half of the councillors did not think that was ready to go out for consultation tells you something is going wrong in our planning.
Thanks for that, Viv. Now, Cheryl, any follow-ups?
Yeah, thanks, Viv. I have two questions for you. In terms of Auckland Unlimited, what would be your first brief to them in terms of, one, selling the Auckland brand overseas, and two, in terms of bringing events back to Auckland?
In terms of selling us overseas, we've been stressing to Council and Auckland Unlimited how important it is that we deal with the crime and antisocial issues, because that is going to ultimately affect our reputation. And I'm concerned that it already is starting to, and we just cannot accept that. In terms of events, I think most of us, it depends, we've got to have quality events that actually make a difference. And I think there's something that doesn't connect right for me in terms of the interaction with networks like the bids. So I think we can all see the benefit of having, for example, if an America's Cup had happened again with the existing infrastructure, that would be a wonderful boon for the region and actually for New Zealand. I think with the FIFA coming up and some of those events, they will be good for the region. But I think making sure we're doing the right ones and leveraging the opportunity effectively is going to be important. So I would actually like to see a lot more interaction between Auckland Unlimited and the bid network, for example, that is so close to the actual businesses.
Thank you. And then my last question was just in terms of how business is feeling about local politics. I think generally businesses are very disillusioned. They're very disillusioned that they can have any impact, or that council even care about them. What do you think you can do to engage businesses in this lead up to the election?
I think they are disillusioned, and actually I find that actually quite tragic, because local government is vital actually, and I think with what we've been through in the last couple of years, it's absolutely vital that we get the right leadership to lead us out of this. And business obviously creates, create jobs, pay taxes, and it's important that we get an environment that is good for business. So what I would like is for businesses to recognise how important this is. I think they do, but they get so disillusioned because so many decisions have been made that haven't actually taken cognizance of feedback. And I can give you a classic example. It was a city centre project that was problematic from our perspective. Our businesses and large property owners were not listened to, which is concerning in itself. But what happened is I actually got calls and messages from across the region from other people telling me that they had the same experience. This is happening everywhere I go. There is a major problem. So we have to get a change that actually respects the people of our city, respects their views, and actually finds a way to make sure that they're actually heard and they have a say. Local input does get listened to. It doesn't mean that every decision becomes a committee. That would be the worst thing. But we have to find a way for people to feel that they're actually able to be heard. They don't have to be if they don't want to be, but they have to respect and understand the decisions are made then. And that is not happening at the moment, and that's why things go round and round and round. So when I raised it with someone a number of years ago, and they said it's kind of the Auckland disease, just things go round and round, you have all these different views. I want to stop that. At the end of the day, I want people, whether it's business or ratepayer or resident, they feel part of our city and they feel proud of our council. When I lived in Wellington, I had an excellent relationship with successive mayors down there, and the reality is, as a resident, even before I got involved, I actually felt quite proud of our council. That's probably not the case for a lot of residents now. I think it's possible, but we've got to change the way we do things. We really, really do.
Thank you. It's all from me, Mark.
Thanks, Jill. So I'll give you a couple of minutes now to do your rousing sort of finale of the reasons why we should be voting for you, and then we'll come back and just do a wrap up.
Well, in summary, I think there is a ton of potential in our region. I think what we need to do is sort out the things that are holding us back, the issues that just go on and on and on. We've got to deal with them with urgency. We have to be ambitious to get the place we really want. The leadership I bring would be constructive, collaborative, and results-oriented. We would achieve what we need to achieve, and that's my message.
Awesome. Thank you, Viv. Thank you to our media panel, Simon, Todd, Brent and Mark, for joining us today. And Viv, thank you for your time this morning coming along to give us sort of your view of the world if you become the Mayor of Auckland. This is an ongoing series for everyone, the Battle for Auckland Mayoral series. We've got previous webinars with Wayne Brown and Leo Malloy available on the Newmarket website. Next week, we have Efeso Collins. And finally, after that, Craig Lord on the 2nd of June. But once again, thanks for joining us this morning, everybody. Thank you, Viv. Thank you, media panel. And thanks to my colleagues from Parnell, Ponsonby, Uptown, and Karangahape Road. Everyone stay safe and keep dry. Take care. Cheers.
Thank you.